Good morning, everyone. A very warm welcome to all of you to this new course, Research Writing and Communication, organized by the Consciousness Studies program from the National Institute of Studies, Advanced Studies, Bangalore. So this, am I audible?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. So this course is by Dr. Sangeetha Menon and Dr. Madhurima Das, two powerful educators, two excellent teachers and communicators who has really found out what the students are actually grappling with in the academic field. And we as students, as young academicians, as young scholars would know how difficult it is when it comes to writing a research paper and communicating our work. And it is in this circumstance that these teachers have come up with this very interesting course. And to introduce it to you further, I request Dr. Sangeetha Menon, who is Dean of Humanities and also the head of Consciousness Studies program at the National Institute of Advanced Studies. So if you could say a few words, ma'am.
Good morning, all of you. And good morning, Meera Menon. Good morning, Dr. Madhurima Das. A warm welcome and greetings to you. And welcome all of you all there. I mean, perhaps you can show your video, it's okay, so that we know you are there, because you know that many of these courses, sometimes we get the opportunity to attend 3-4 courses at the same time, right? In 4 computers, 4 courses. And we don't show our video, so nobody knows where you are there, or so that's a good way to do things, but it may not help us. So we genuinely request you to attend only this course at this time, and pay your respects to your teachers in that way, because they are doing a lot to put together this course. We have received tremendous number of applications, and our team has worked together to bring to you this course who we feel require, will benefit, and also you will be able to share what you have learned with others. The motto of our institute and our program, which is NIAS Consciousness Studies program, is not only to create knowledge, but share knowledge freely and selflessly. So you have a teacher today, Dr. Madhurima Das, who is again a selfless teacher and an excellent teacher in this particular topic. I don't think I can name another one who has her excellence as a teacher and as a creative thinker, who can put together material and exercises and thinking tips on such a topic, because otherwise a topic like research writing can be slightly not so interesting, right? But then I don't think you will even lose a moment with Dr. Madhurima Das, and you have an excellent teacher here. And I hope all of you will make as much as you can from this course, because it's not very easy to get such courses, let me be frank and honest with you. And so please make the best use of it, this course. And any questions you have, you can contact Meera Menon and write to her an email about your question. So wish you the best and welcome all of you once again. Back to you, Meera Menon.
Meera?
Meera, you're muted.
There's a slight network issue. I apologize for the inconvenience, but yeah, I would like to introduce Dr. Madhurima Das.
We lost you in the beginning. Meera, we lost you in the beginning. Your sound was not coming. Yeah.
Okay. There's a slight, right. There's a slight network issue. I apologize for the inconvenience, and I would like to introduce Dr. Madhurima Das. She has 16 years of experience in academia and industry with a keen focus on learning and development. She is a trained psychologist with a PhD in management from the Indian Institute of Science, Bangalore, an academic facilitator specializing in courses on behavioral science, organizational development and change, research writing and methodology, She's also an industrial consultant with a forte in custom programs on work-life balance and emotional intelligence, learning and performance management, storytelling, mentoring and networking, organizational culture and climate, creativity and innovation, eye for detail and accountability. She's also a posh enabler for organizations and a diversity and inclusion expert. Also, she specializes in the development and execution of behavioral assessment and analysis to delineate skill gaps in individuals and the corresponding organization of both academia and industry and plan interventions for change accordingly. So I think that is quite an exhaustive list of things that Dr. Madhurima Das is, but the list actually does go on. She's also a great teacher, which we will get to know soon. So welcome, Dr. Madhurima, and we are very glad to have you and all of you on behalf of Team CSP. And I welcome you to start the course.
Thank you so much, Meera. That was a very kind introduction. As I begin, I would like to thank Professor Sangeetha Menon, whose brainchild this course is. And when she reached out to me, and I was more than glad to collaborate because it's always fascinating to work with you, Dr. Sangeetha. To understand that learning is a selfless venture and to bring together different diverse minds from across disciplines. I think NIAS CSP has done this seamlessly over the pandemic. And that's where this course is another of their offerings. So it's a pleasure for me to be a part of this group and to teach you all over the next couple of weeks. Morning, everyone. Thank you so much for joining in on time. And as we begin this course, I will be sharing my screen. It's interactive. So a couple of ground rules for all of us. Please interact when you can. Okay, we'll have polls. We understand we're a large number of us, but the idea is every thought matters. Research writing is an essential skill, but also a skill that we develop over time. All of us present here have at some point flummoxed when we have had to write. We have wondered what is it that we should put on paper, and we have stared at that blank paper. The idea of curating this course has been to help you through that process, to help you understand that you're not alone in this journey of research writing, and to see how we can look at it from an interdisciplinary perspective, look at it from the idea that it's a skill that we can develop. So keeping that in mind, I'm going to share my presentation, and we're going to look at what we have today. Meera, the slide is visible?
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, okay. All right, everyone, welcome to the course. As we begin today, we are going to look and start with an introduction to research writing. So what are we looking over the next 120 minutes that we have with each other? We're going to first try and understand what are our challenges, right? What is it that is the stumbling block when we try to write? Then we're going to look at the research writing process. What happens in our mind? What is it that's cognitively taking place? Why is it that we all take some time to start? Why is it that some of us are immediately able to look at a paper and start writing? Right? We're going to understand the component of rewriting, which comes even before you put those words on paper. We're going to look at how do you organize your thoughts and why is revision an important part of the writing process. And then we'll look at a few things about what is research writing and what is not. We will look at a couple of basic tenets of it, basic types of it. And then we will close the discussion today to understand, is there a difference between writing in science and writing in social science? Okay, the information that you will see during the course of these sessions have all been curated from the Purdue Writing Lab and from various other journal papers and publications. Post sessions, we will also look at curating handouts, which will be shared with all participants for the class notes, but you're free to make your notes during the course of the session. And also we have a Q&A at the end of the session when you can put forth your questions. So as we begin this journey, what is it that challenges you? Okay, so I want you all to spend the next 40 seconds, 30 to 40 seconds answering a poll. Meera, could you please put on the first poll on the chat? Okay, let us begin this with understanding what is it that troubles us. We have a poll that's been put on the chat. I want you all to respond to it. This is the first poll, Meera. Yeah, okay. All right, I want you all to respond to this. The question is, what are your challenges in research writing? You have been given a couple of options. Each of you can choose up to 3 options. Okay. Look at things that trouble you. Look at things that are stumbling blocks. Look at things that run in your head when you're trying to write. Okay. I want everyone here to answer, which means we have about 264 participants, which includes Professor Sangeetha, Menon, and me. So we are looking at least 260 odd responses. Are you open? I'm hoping that everyone is able to open the link and answer.
The link is working, ma'am.
Okay, okay, fantastic. All right, that's quick. Yeah, let's see what the results show. All right, everyone. As you all are responding, you will see that the numbers on the screen are changing. Mira, is the graph visible?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. You will see that the numbers are changing. I can also see how many people have actually responded. We are at 170 now. We still have about 80 or 90 of you. All right, that should be quick. First thought that comes to your mind on what is it that challenges you when you want to write? Okay, we do see, fantastic, that's moving fast. We do see some trends in the results. Remember, there are no right and wrong answers when we do these kind of questions. They're your opinions, they're your perceptions, right? And our perceptions come from our experiences, our understanding. So I'm going to give it another minute. I hope all the participants who have logged in are here, are taking the poll with us.
Veera, can you please repost the link because some have joined now, if possible.
All right, participants, we have Meera, who is going to post a link. It's a survey to understand your challenges in research writing. You have a set of options. Each of you can choose up to 3 options. All right, we have touched the magical number of 200. Participants, this has to be quick. The first thought that comes to your mind. As of now, when we look at the results, we see that the largest challenge, right? Okay, I'm going to keep talking because while the rest of you, about 240 have, I think, responded already. Okay, while another 20, 30 of you do. One of the largest challenges that have emerged from this group is the difficulty in articulating and building a narrative, right? When we look through your applications, we realized all of you are skilled. You're skilled in your subject matter. Many of you have, apart from academic work, also, maybe interned, maybe volunteered, you have worked with organizations. So you all come with a varied experience in your subject matter. But we also realize that all of you have stated some common challenges of writing. Okay, so here the largest challenge that has come out is your difficulty in articulating and building a narrative. We will be looking at it during the course. Okay, we will tell you how do you build a narrative, how do you tell your story. Research writing is like storytelling with facts, figures, and rationality. So we will be looking at that. There's one thing on lack of clarity, right? And the entire thought, assimilating the thought, we will also look at that. So we will look at how do you put your thoughts together. In our unit 2, when we do some elements of writing, we will touch upon it again. While today we begin with the pre-writing process, we will do this over unit 2. And again, when we look at creativity, we will tell you how do you gain that clarity in writing. Okay. The other challenges that are there is, linking interdisciplinary components. We do understand from your applications that some of you are from interdisciplinary fields and some of you are from a pure subject field. But the reality of today is that as you start writing your research work or as you interact with more people, you'll realize that you're bringing in multidisciplinary elements. And it's important to understand how to seamlessly connect those elements. So we will look at that. And structuring paragraphs, vocabulary, grammar, are also challenges. Okay, abstract thinking with few of you, but I see that grammar and lack of creativity are the least of your challenges. But interestingly, we have dedicated 2 full units to them. And the reason is that grammar, there's only so much that your tools online can tell you. A lot of the grammar writing has to come to us naturally, and it's something that we can learn to improve our writing. We are also looking at creativity. And why are we looking at creativity? Because to be able to link your interdisciplinary elements, to be able to have clarity in your thought, it's important to understand that creativity moves through a phase. And we will connect with that in that unit. Okay, I have about 222. I'm going to show this in the larger screen so you're able to see this. Give me a moment. So that's our final results, more or less, with 222 participants who have written. I think the others are still thinking, but you can take the thing and this gets updated over some time. Okay, so that's our result from our group. We are answering all these challenges during the course that we are doing. Okay, so when we looked at your applications, there were a few things that came out. Why are you here? Okay, and it's important for us to set that context because this context will drive our conversations during the course. Okay, some of you said that you want to learn either academic or research writing and how do you publish papers and articles. Many of you are UG or PG students who want to pursue PhD. A lot of you said the course is all about interest, learning, and upgrading your knowledge. Then we have some of you who said this is for your current academic development. You all are professors, you all are teaching in colleges, in institutions, and you would like to develop your academic skills. Some of you said that it's for professional development. We do have some participants who have worked in both corporate and in academia, and you see this as a professional development space for you. And then we have a large chunk of our participants who are current doctoral students and who feel that a course like this will help you write not just your papers better, your journal articles better, but also help in your final thesis dissertation. Okay, so this is largely why you all are here. And as we move on, as we delve into research writing, you will also understand that it's important for us to look at the larger goal. What's the larger goal? Why are we here? Okay, research writing is important because it allows a discipline and a research community to grow. As you write, you connect with people. As you learn, you connect with people. And you're able to create a repository of knowledge with your writing. What you write impacts human development or society. Each time you do some research, whether it's qualitative or quantitative in nature, you write about it and you publish it. You also set forth a cyclical process of its implications. And with that, you impact human development and society. You impact the current way of thinking. Whether you're doing some research in the area of pure sciences, natural sciences, social sciences, humanities, you are constantly impacting the way of thinking, right? As we do these courses, you will realize that each of you come from a varied background. And when you share your thoughts, you will see that each of you are going to impact another person's thinking during the course, okay? Some of you also mentioned this. It's about convincing funding agents or scientific forums in inappropriate ways. So you all want to apply for a particular project, you want to apply for a particular grant. How do you convince them? For that, you need to be able to write well. What's also important for all of us here to understand is that for a researcher to have a rich experience, the writing needs to be reflexive. We will be doing a small segment on reflexivity, but it's about why must one partake in my research? What is in it for a particular participant? Right? So there's a lot of reflection that's involved when you do your research writing, and the process of research writing brings together and connects everything that you have experienced during the course of your primary or secondary research. And that's your larger goal of research writing. But what is it? What is its basic tenets? What is its basic purpose? Right? If I have to summarize, if I have to simply put across main purposes of research writing, one of it would be to report on a research that you will conduct or that you have conducted. right? Some of you already wrote in your application that I'm doing this project and I'm not understanding how do I write the report for it, right? So that's research writing. Some of you have said, I want to participate in research projects. I want to do my master's thesis, or I want to do my doctoral work, and I'm going to start writing. And how do I write it? Research writing is also about answering a question or a problem that you have been given. Sometimes you're given the problem by your research guides. Sometimes you choose a problem on your own. It depends on the institution that you're affiliated with. But at the end of the day, while you do research writing, you're primarily answering a question. You're solving a problem. A lot of times, writing is also about giving you viewpoint or your opinion, right? A lot of times writing is simply about collating or synthesizing research that has been done by others. Basic purposes. There are much larger purposes. There are much deeper purposes, but we will look into that one by one. But these are your basic purposes: to report on a research that either you will conduct or you have conducted, to answer a question, to answer a problem statement, to give your viewpoint, to share your thoughts, to discuss, to explain, right? You have descriptive research, you have explanatory research, you have exploratory research, different forms of research. All of them answer questions. They do it differently. They connect the dots differently. Some of them are inductive in nature, some of them are deductive in nature. But the idea is, through your writing, you share your thoughts. And finally, you collate and you synthesize research. That's also done by others, right? But there are a couple of things that you have to remember. Research writing is about being accurate, and research writing is about being objective. As researchers, we all may have our viewpoints that we bring to the field. We may have our viewpoints as we sit to write or type out that document. But when we are putting across a writing for research purpose, it has to be objective by nature. We will look at objectivity as a component during the course also. Okay, and what each of us here in this room, right? We are 280 participants today. We have to remember that we all have varied styles of writing. There is no single style that's perfect, right? You have to, over time, develop your style. How do you write? What is it that you want to tell somebody, right? Some of us are very good with using data. Some of us use a very, very instinctual style of writing. Some of us write where, it's very literary in the manner in which we write our sentences. Some of us write very short, very crisp sentences. They're all different styles of writing. From a grammar perspective, from a vocabulary perspective, from writing tenets perspective, there are a few things we have to largely keep in mind. But at the end of the day, each of us over time develop a style of writing, right? And that style of writing and that narrative is your own. While you're writing, there's one more component that we have to always remember, and that is understand your audience. Understand what is your audience seeking. Are you writing it for your peers? Are you writing it for a funding agency? Are you writing it for a particular journal? Today, journals not only ask you to submit an abstract which you've written, there are some journals which also look at you submitting a short video, right? So the medium of expressing your writing has changed, is diverse, is varied, and you will have to over time learn to express yourself through different mediums. This course focuses on the writing component, but you'll have to still understand your audience. Who is it that you're writing for? Are you writing about your work for a newspaper publication? Then you'll have to simplify your work. So at any point of time, always remember, always think, sit back and understand what is the purpose of the writing that you're doing. That becomes very, very important. I do understand some of you on the chat are asking about questions. You will be able to look at the questions at the end of the session. Do make a note of it. Okay. Now, like I said, while you understand what's research writing, you also have to understand what is it that a research paper is and what is it not, right? A research paper has been variedly defined, and I'm using definitions that have been given by researchers. Some of them say it's the culmination and final product of a process of research, of a process of critical thinking. There is some evaluation, some organization, and some composition. All of this is true. When you're writing, you write after you have been through an involved process of research. Okay, so a research paper is your reflection. A research paper is your understanding. A research paper is about how you present your data, how you present the results of your study. There's a lot of critical thinking involved when you write, because you could have a large amount of data before you, but how are you looking at it? You could be a scientist who's done lab experiments. You could be a social scientist who's done field work. But how are you looking at that data and how are you putting it across? What is it that you want to tell your audience, right? Keeping the data objective, how are you going to present what the data trend is? The poll that we did today was a very, very simple form of understanding data, right? I asked you a question, but I said there are three options. So I still clearly only know that there are three things that are troubling. But if I had to tell you, choose one option, then the choice would have become difficult. Then the analysis of the same question would have to be a little different. Okay? The paper evaluates what you're writing. It's also how you're organizing your research thoughts. And it's about how are you composing the entire idea. So you have a larger goal. Your research paper, your research writing has a larger goal. And when you're writing, you have smaller goals within it. What are you talking about? Who is your audience? What exactly are you expressing? What is the implication of your work? Have you put across your methodology very, very succinctly in your paper? All these are part of your composition of the paper, right? Research writing is also called a genre that requires one to spend time investigating and evaluating the sources, because you're going to provide interpretation of the texts. A lot of research papers or writings that you may come across could also be analysis of prior work done. They could just be a review of the literature that's there. At such a time, it's about investigating and evaluating those sources. It's about investigating and understanding, do the different elements of the idea connect with each other, right? Research writing is like a journey of exploration, interpretation, and evaluation. You're exploring ideas, you're exploring components, then you're interpreting and you're seeing if there's a relationship between various components. Some of us study correlation, some of us study causality, some of us study impact, right? There are different terminologies for it. There are different ways to look at it. For some of us, the study is diagnostic in nature. For some of us, the studies are evaluative in nature, okay? And then you present a final evaluation as a researcher and you write. When you write, you have to remember that your primary and your secondary sources of information have to interact with each other. One has to back up the other, right? What you find in the field or what you find in your experiments when you write about it, okay, you have to understand that there could be prior literature which talks about it. There could also be a lacuna of work which connects those variables that you're looking at. Then how do you address those gaps? In research writing, it is your perspective that you're presenting. And like I said before, it furthers the field of study and the knowledge bank, right? It furthers the students' knowledge, it furthers the teacher's knowledge. We are constantly learning. Each time I take a course on writing, I am learning from my participants. There's an idea that I may not have thought about, which comes across from all of you. So research writing is a continuous evolving process. But what is a research paper not? It's not just a summary of topic, right? When you say I'm doing research and I'm doing research writing, it just doesn't mean you bring together things and present it. It's not just a summary. That summary has to have some amount of investigation, some amount of evaluation, some amount of perspective finding. And it's not an unconscious regurgitation, which means it's not like you just by heart and you wrote everything and you just put it across. It's not that. It's a much deeper process. It's cognitively a deeper process. It's a process where you're thinking, and then you're converting that into words, and then you're putting it on paper. Research writing is often a work in progress. Obviously, we do have deadlines for our journal manuscripts. We have deadlines for papers. We have deadlines for articles. We have deadlines for our thesis. But at the end of the day, you can ask anybody who has completed their doctoral work, when they look back, they always find things to improve, because research writing is a constant work in progress. As we talk about research writing and what the process is, I also want to take you a step back. Even before you write, what is it that you have to keep in mind? What is the pre-writing process, right? This may be familiar to all of you, right? We could sit, there are some of us who may sit with our laptops, a mug of tea or coffee or any hot beverage that you like. And a lot of us may still like to first jot down our points in a book, right? And that's our pre-writing process. When I write, I'm constantly making notes. If I'm taking a class today, I'm making notes for the same, because the thoughts come in. When you write, you're thinking and you're writing slowly. Okay. You could also attribute it to the fact that somewhere my thinking and writing is still traditional, which means I want to first write it on paper and then put the thought together and type it out. Right? It's how we think. It's how individualistically we put our thoughts together. Some of you could be doing a list and your thoughts come together. Some of you could be drawing a flowchart. Some of you could be mind mapping your thoughts. Some of you could be drawing it out. Right? So writing is that expression. But obviously, on a formal research document, you will have to write it in words. You'll have to understand how to do your sentences. You'll have to understand how to connect the paragraphs. And you'll have to understand how to build in credibility and coherence in your writing. So what's our pre-writing process? Right? There's pre-writing, there's organizing, and there is revising. The pre-writing process, okay, these are 3 phases in the writing process, okay? The pre-writing process is this. We start with a blank mind. Okay, all of you here, think of the first time you have written. Let's not give it a big word. Let's not say research document. Let's say the first time you have written something for your academic purpose. Okay, you start with a blank mind. And then what happens? If you're working in a group, you brainstorm, right? But if you're doing it individually, you are brainstorming within yourself, right? Because if you have to sit back and if you have to imagine, you have multiple thoughts, you have multiple ideas, and you're constantly drawing a connect between them. You're constantly connecting the dots. You know the pathways in your thought, right? Just close your eyes and imagine this, that each time you have an idea, you move from a blank space of mind to a space that's where brainstorming is happening, right? Some of us scribble at that point, some of us doodle, some of us just sit back and enjoy that process, because you need clarity in the mind before you write, right? That brainstorming becomes very, very important. A lot of us, right? On the chat, if you can quickly tell me, how many of you, when you brainstorm, you feel excited and it gives you a rush? Quickly on the chat. Yes, it does. Do you feel that, immense adrenaline rush when you're writing, when you're brainstorming? When you see those multiple ideas and somewhere there lies that aha moment. Yeah, that's a lot of yes. Okay, you recognize that aha moment, don't you? You recognize it. It gives you a rush. Some of you have said it gives me a rush. It does. Why does that happen? Because when you're organizing your thoughts, when you're wanting to put it on paper, you see an idea converting to reality, and that's your pre-writing phase. The pre-writing is a cognitive rush, right? And then what do? As you put thoughts on paper, before that, schematically, you represent and collate information, right? And the schematic representation and collation of information becomes very, very important. Like I said, you could be doing a flowchart. You could be making multiple lists. Some of you could collate your thoughts on an Excel, right? I had a student who collated her thoughts on Excel because she said that she could see things better on a tabulated format, right? I had a student who would actually draw things. So she would draw visual art to say, you know what, this is my idea, and this is what I'm talking about, right? These are schematic representations that we do. And then there's a particular very, very useful tool called cubing. I'll come to that tool in a while. I'll talk to you about something called cubing, and I'll talk to you about something called the status theory, given by the Greek philosophers, but something that we works even today. So that's your first part of the writing process, the pre-writing, the cognitive rush. Then when you move on from the cognitive rush, you come to organizing it. What do? The mind has thought, you're feeling fantastic about it. And then you start putting that outline on paper, right? A lot of us, we first put heading, then we put the subheadings, right? And then we slowly see things emerging, right? That emergence of the idea onto the paper and that writing of that outline again goes through a brainstorming process. You had something on your mind, and then you have something when when it's put on paper. When it's put on paper, you then see things that you may not have also seen visually in your mind. You see more things emerging. Then you organize your writing, then you order it. You realize that, okay, these are the components I want to talk about in this research paper, right? So this is my introduction. This is my main content. This is my conclusion. This is an argumentative paper. I'm arguing for a particular reason. I'm arguing for a particular thought. I'm saying that air pollution has an impact on the health of young children and elderly people alike. Okay, and I'm arguing why we should reduce air pollution. You could be exploring the thought. You could be trying to do a survey and understanding how has air pollution impacted respiratory health of children and elderly people, the geriatric population, right? You could just be describing it. You could just be looking at secondary data and describing it. In organizing, this is what you're doing. You're deciding how to do it. You're deciding what you want to put across, what you want to say. You order your thoughts. And finally, in writing, we label components of our writing, right? Our subheadings, our main headings are all our miniature goals in writing. Your entire paper or document that you're writing is your larger goal. The sub goals are the components that you're going to be put in, and those become your subheadings. Okay, just see how from pre-writing you're moving to organizing on paper, right? And then you have written that first document. You've written it. But then what do you need to do? You need to revise. Okay. These three processes are constant. You go back and forth multiple times in this process. For the ease of understanding, I have put together in a schematic diagram like this, but this is a process that goes on. So while you're organizing, you go back to pre-writing because a new idea has come to you. And then you first organizing in your head and you put it on paper. While revising, you realize you have missed out something. You go back to organizing, you put that back into your document, and then you come back to revising. This is a continuous process. This is an interlinked process. It's like a well-oiled machinery that's happening. And while you're revising, you have to proofread your document. Your first draft is for your eyes only, right? How many versions do we have? As a doctoral scholar, you will realize, all of you who are doctoral scholars here, that you have version 1, version 1.1, version 1.2, right? And sometimes it's version 1 to the power of n, because you constantly have versions. It's a constant work in progress. Always analyze what you've written. Always understand it. Get somebody else, get a peer to proofread it for you. Get another eye. Because when we write, when we are doing it, when it's our work, a lot of times we are blinded. We miss out errors that somebody else could see. And that's very, very important, right? And revision. You'll have to constantly revise what you've written. I could be doing this course many a times, but each time I have to do it, I will always revise. I'll always read up. I will always learn more. I'll always add new elements each time I teach the course on writing, because we learn from our past. We have to put that into our analysis. We'll have to revise what we are learning, what we are writing. So the writing process is this three: pre-writing, organizing, and revising. But let's now look at two very interesting elements of pre-writing. The first of that is what we call cubing. Now, what's cubing? Cubing is considering a subject from 6 points of view. Okay, it could be any of it. You could look at, the impact of COVID on single-use plastic. That could be a topic. You could look at, the rising domestic violence during the pandemic, or you could look at, how has human-animal conflict, okay, in natural habitats changed over the last few years. You could look at any topic, okay? But when you look at a subject, you have to understand. I've just taken 3 random examples based on different application and different backgrounds. But what I'm saying is you could also be studying, say, if you're studying literature and you're looking at a particular genre of writing, and you're trying to understand how did the genre emerge, and how did, say, feminist writers in a particular period of time talk about literature. What did they talk in literature? Okay, so it could be any subject. Now there are 6 ways of looking at it from a pre-writing phase. Are you describing what you're writing? Remember, this is when the cognitive magic is happening, right? It's like a magic in the head. Are you describing what you're writing? Are you comparing two elements? Okay. For example, I am from a background of work-life research. I look at work-life balance and integration. So am I describing a work-life policy in an organization? Am I comparing the work-life policy in different organizations, public sector, private sector? Am I trying to associate? Am I trying to see that if an organization has good work-life policies, it also leads to people being happy, to employees being engaged? Is that what I'm looking at? Right? Also, what is the next thing that I can do? Am I analyzing it? Right? How am I analyzing it? Okay, if the work-life policy is there, then I see that it leads to lesser absenteeism. Flexibility as a work-life policy helps organizations. How am I applying that subject? Okay, I'm going to help organizations understand how to improve work-life integration of their employees. How do I argue for or against it? I feel that work-life policies are often misused, so they are not useful. I'm just giving you how one subject can be looked from 6 different viewpoints. Okay, and this process is called cubing. It is definitely used for literature review also. We do have a complete segment on literature review. So I just quickly saw that on chat. So all you participants who are wanting to understand that, we will look at that when we do literature review. This component of cubing is obviously used both cognitively, but it's also used for literature review. While you do a literature review, understand what your variables are, your input variables, your independent variables, your dependent variables, your mediating, moderating variables, and also understand thematically how are you going to look at your subject. And that's when you will decide, do you want to describe the topic? Do you want to compare it, associate it, analyze it, apply it, or argue for or against it? Okay, so that's cubing. The other interesting component that happens with pre-writing is called the status theory. The status theory is about finding the common ground, right? It's a 4-question pre-writing process. It's a part of the invention, yeah, the invention that's happening in our minds. And it was interestingly developed in ancient Greece by Aristotle and Hermogenes. However, we are still using it, and I'll tell you how. So what are the 4 things in that process? The first thing, what are the facts you're talking about? What's a conjecture? What is it that you're dealing with? For example, if I'm looking at work-life balance, what are my facts? These are the policies that are there in the organization currently. So many employees are actually using this right now. Okay, so that's a fact. Then the nature of the issue, how am I defining it? What is exactly work-life policy? Is it flexibility? Is it the fact that employees have the facility of daycare in their organization? Is it the fact that an employee can work from home and extend that over time? Right? What is the meaning? What is the nature of the issue? So one is the facts, the complete objective facts. Then one is, how do I define that? How do I define the subject? Then is the quality. What is the seriousness of the issue? Why is it that organizations are looking at work-life balance? The pandemic, right? It threw up a lot of questions on mental health. It threw up an understanding of how mental health is the prerogative of the individual, the prerogative of the society, and the prerogative of the organization the individual is part of, right? You cannot put the entire pressure of mental health on one person, right? Our mental health is related to the people we meet, the people we interact with. Our workplace, how do we work? The larger society that we are a part of. We can obviously look at it from Simon Sinek's Golden Circle or from the Circle of Influence by Stephen Covey. But the understanding is, how do we look at that component, right? So the seriousness of a particular issue, your qualitative component of the subject. And finally, how does it impact? What's the implication? What's a policy component, right? Now, all forms of writing do not necessarily have to have all these 4 questions. You could choose one question to answer. And that's the beauty of research writing. Like I said, just the way you will over time develop your own style, you will also understand that in your writing, you could either explain one particular component, or you could be explaining multiple components. I understand that I have a participant who's asked me to go slow, so I will try and maybe go a little slow. That's Savita. Thank you so much, Savita, for putting that across. I shall keep that in mind. Now, why This is a very interesting thing, right? The entire thing of going fast when you're talking is also about our rate of speech. Some of us have a fast rate of speech, and I do have it. So at any point of time, if any of you feel you want me to slow down, do let me know. I'm happy to, reduce the pace of speaking. Okay, so that is what we look at, right? These four components. This is our status theory. But how can these components, okay, be linked to each other? They can be. I could study the fact of a particular subject, and I could study at its implication. I could study at what does the fact actually mean, and I could look at, okay, does it even have an impact? Am I understanding the whereabouts of it? Okay, you can do it very, very differently, and you can decide depending on your area of work, how do you want to connect it? Okay, and this is your 5W and 1H. Is there anybody who can quickly write down what is 5W and 1H? Yeah, I have Amit who's answered that. It's what, why, where, when, yeah, who and how. Okay, used very, very broadly. Okay, used very, very popularly in management jargon. But this is what the status theory is all about: explaining the 5 Ws and the 1H. How, what, when, where, who. Okay, all of that. Now, when you come to writing a paper, right, what is it that you have to keep in mind when you're writing a paper? We're going to look at a couple of elements before we move on. Okay. All this while, what we spoke about was things that we have to do as scholars, right? Things that we have to keep in mind when we are looking at the cognitive process of rewriting, when we are looking at connecting the dots, when we are looking at putting it on paper. But there are some components, okay, which as a researcher are human elements. Okay, so I'm talking about that here. When you're writing a research paper, and I'm not talking of your skill, I'm talking of something that's beyond your skill, but which has to work hand in hand with the skill of writing. The first point is diligence. Okay, writing is about diligence at any point of time. You have to constantly focus on what you're writing. Okay, you will never have a draft ready at the first go. So you'll have to be persistent. You'll have to have the patience to redo it again, to rewrite it again. All of us have worked with guides. Okay, many of you will be looking to have a research guide, and you have to understand that they're there to help us in the journey, right? So be open to suggestions, be open to opinions, be open to feedback, because you will have to constantly revise. When you're writing a paper, organize your thoughts, organize your workspace, organize your mind. Okay, you cannot do writing and do multiple things at the same time. Multitasking is a very fancy word, but multitasking is actually divided attention. Even in multitasking, you can only do one primary task at a time, and everything else that you do is auxiliary by nature. So you have to organize your writing mentally, your writing space, the environment that you are writing in. Different people write differently. Okay, there are some people who may like to sit in a park and write. There are some people who want to sit in a quiet room. There are some people who can only write when they're listening to music, right? These are all very, very individual things, but you will have to figure out when do you write best. Okay, the component of the circadian rhythm comes in. Some of us write well in the early hours of the day. Some of us write well in the late hours of the night, right? Some of us are larks, we are day people. Some of us are owls, we are night people. So when you're writing, this component becomes very important. At what part of the day are you writing best? When is your mind on fire? Right? When are you able to think? Are you able to narrate? Are you able to put ideas together and you're able to actually write those pages? Right? So you'll have to understand that. Practice. Along with patience, you'll have to keep practicing. While the challenges of grammar and vocabulary came out as much lower on the poll, you have to understand that the only way to improve your vocabulary and to ensure that your grammar is good is practicing your writing, right? The more you write, the better you get at it. And like I say, online tools can only help you to some extent. At the end of it, you have to understand, where do you want simple sentences? Where do you want complex sentences? Where do you want coherence in your paragraph? And how are you driving at that coherence? Tools can only help you to an extent. So this is something that comes with practice. And finally, writing is about one component. It's about a willingness to learn and to be all right with making mistakes. We all make mistakes, right? While creating this presentation, I always proofread. I constantly cross-check. I did a final cross-checking and proofreading this morning because I was like, okay, is there an extra T? Is there an extra, apostrophe? Is there an extra E, right? So there has to be a constant willingness to learn. Depending on some of the questions that are coming up on chat and some of the thoughts that are shared, I already know what else can I add into this session, right? That willingness to learn is what makes us writers, is what makes us research writers. So these are not about skill. These are beyond skill. These are human behavioral elements that each of us have to bring to the table when we want to write well, right? Diligence cannot be really taught. Patience cannot be really taught. It is a self-cultivated behavior. And these behavioral components become a large part of how we write. Okay. Now, as you write, the other big question, like I said before, who is your audience? Articulate who your audience is, right? For example, the slide today in my presentation, when I said, why are you here, was also about articulating who you are, right? But it's very, very important. With the organizing team, when I was sitting with them, I was sitting with Meera and we were looking at the applications, right? We also had to identify our audience. And what you wrote, the reason you were asked a question of why you want to be a part of this course is also to understand where you come from. Okay. Similarly, when you write a paper, when you write a document, when you write a manuscript, when you write an article, you have to understand who is it you're writing it for. Are you writing it for your peers who are in the same area of work? Are you writing it for senior researchers who are going to review your work? Are you writing it as an article for, a quarterly magazine or for the newspaper, right? And what about your research will interest them? Are you, the kind of questions you ask, like I said, are you explaining something? Are you describing something? Are you exploring different components? Are you presenting an argumentative thread? It depends on which part of research will interest them, right? And I'm not talking of clickbait headlines or clickbait titles to paper. I'm talking about understand it as a researcher, what will interest the person across, right? How will you pick somebody's interest? Why is it that we are looking at, a particular topic and we pick up that paper to read? How will you pick somebody's interest? One is the title of your paper, the title of your research writing. But the other thing is the relevant questions that you ask will pick somebody's interest, right? With about so many of you on the session today, my idea of also doing the poll was to keep, picking your interest, okay? And you have to understand that depending on where you're sending your writing to, depending on the journal you're following, depending on the style of writing you're following, right? Whether you're following the MLA style, the APA style, it depends. You'll have to follow those guidelines. Okay, that becomes very, very important. Okay, also in your writing, how do you prepare counter arguments? You're not going to argue in your writing for the sake of it. You're not there to win a battle. You're there to rationally, objectively present your data, your fact, and your research understanding. And always remember that when you're writing, when you're reaching out to an audience, this is your initiation into a community of scholars, right? And you have to some extent decide what route you want to take. How do you define that? That becomes very, very important. Somebody's asked me if it's PICK or it's PIQUE. It's pick their interest. It's not picking, which is PICK, but it's pick. It's about hitting on a point and, it's like that light bulb. Let the light bulb light and let them think about what you ask. That's picking somebody's interest. Okay. And no, there was no spelling error there. Okay. The next thing that I want to talk about is writer's block. But for that, we're going to do our second poll of the day. Meera, can you share the second poll link with everybody, please?
Yes, ma'am. Just a
Yeah.
second.
Yeah, thank you. Kanchan, I see your question which says scholars is always your audience. No, common public is also your audience. Common public is also your audience. That's where you have to write, maybe science writing, for the layman. Common public is also your audience. Have you shared that, Meera? The second link.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, fantastic. All right, everyone, you again have a minute. This is a question on writer's block, okay? And you can make only one choice this time. So let us see what you all are choosing. Okay, somebody is really quick. Okay. All right, we have 200 of you who've written. That was quick, yeah. Okay. Come on, we still have some of you. We're going to wait for another half a minute maybe to look at this and then understand what this means. A few more of you, can you quickly answer the poll, please? Meera, can you just put it on the chat once more in case somebody's missed it out? All right. Let's look at what happens when you have a writer's block, right? I'm sure all of us in this room have at some point had the writer's block. Thanks, Ajay, for sharing the link again. Thank you so much. Okay, we've all had it. Now, what happens to us, right? Even before we go to solve the problem of the writer's block, we go through a lot of emotional upheaval, and often in writing that becomes, we underestimate ourselves. It's very frustrating. We get flustered about it. There are times when you think, okay, this is just not my writing day. Okay, and writer's block obviously differs person to person. So for some of them it goes off in a few hours maybe, and for some of them it stays for a couple of days, and then you'll need to take a break, right? But what happens? Let's see what you all have answered. Okay. Okay, I'm very glad to see that very few of you have actually chosen, I feel angry that I just cannot write, I'm not a writer. Yeah, that's very harsh on yourself. Remember, we as human beings are very, very critical of ourselves, and that's a very harsh thing to tell ourselves. So don't ever think that, right? We're all learning in the process. We're constantly learning how to write. Okay. Some of them said, I desperately wait for the block to disappear. Yeah, you just want it, right? You're like, okay, I wish I could just move it out. Okay. Then some of you have said, I find it stressful to get over. Yes, it's very stressful. At that phase, just to know that you're not able to write, there is so much to write, and it's worse when you have a deadline. Okay. And it's normal. Okay. And that is what this poll is all about, to tell you that a lot of us go through this, to understand that what you experience, what you feel at that point is normal. Okay, you just want to get over that block, right? Uh, it's good if you believe and you understand that it's just a phase and it shall pass. It's important to be empathetic, right? Like I said, be less critical of yourself, be kind to yourself, be empathetic to yourself. Okay. You feel frustrated with the inability to write, and like I said, and I'm going to repeat again, if there's a deadline, it makes it worse, right? But what happens? The most common answer has been, I feel I'm losing time, yeah, because we constantly feel pressured against time. But this is also a bit about how are we prioritizing our time as research scholars, as writers, as professionals while we write. I mean, do we wait for the last deadline to write, or are we, pacing out our writing? So this is again depending on how your style is. Are you somebody who can write a lot at a go, or are you somebody who writes small chunks at a particular time? Then you'll have to plan out, you'll have to pace out your writing. And that prioritization and that planning becomes important. That to some extent will help you deal with that anxiety, will help you deal with that frustration that you experience. Okay, but what you need to remember from this poll is that you have company. A lot of us who go through these feelings are absolutely normal. And these feelings can be dealt with, and they definitely have solutions. Okay, so that was how do we feel, right? And how do we deal with it? Okay, can somebody quickly just put on the chat, how do you deal with it? How do you deal with the writer's block? What do you do? Yeah, Anvisha, that's right. It's an unusual process for an experienced writer, but it happens. Listen to music, drink coffee, take a break, deadline. I don't like deadline. I go for a walk, I start writing, meditating, introspecting. Okay. Somebody said my senior told me something that was quite interesting. Okay, give it some time, write your diary, brain dump. Yeah. You all have the solutions. Have tea. Yeah, take a break, talk with your supervisor. Yeah. I had a very empathetic supervisor. I lost him last year, but I think one of the best advices he gave me when I began writing is that, it's your piece and you will get to it. And nobody else can really do it for you. And I think that's one of the best pieces of advice I received. Take a break, music. Wow, fantastic. Okay, movies. I take a 1-week tour package. My friend, you have a lot of time, but okay. All right. So what is it? What do you realize that each of you already deal with it, right? That it's real, it's happening to all of us, and we are dealing with it, and each of us find a way. What do I do when I have a writer's block? I'm constantly reading, right? Currently, I'm reading a nonfiction and a fiction. So I revert to reading something that's not concerned with what I'm supposed to be writing. I take my mind away completely. And I think that cognitive break, that cognitive shift at times helps me get back to writing, right? But strategically, how do you deal with writer's block? Strategically, read a better piece of writing, read a novel. Yeah, all of that works. All of those solutions are fantastic. And I'm sure if the other participants are looking through that chat, make a note, because you could use some of those solutions the next time you have a writer's block. Okay, what are the strategies to deal with the stress? Writer's block is one thing, but how do you deal with it? What is the strategy? The first thing, set manageable goals, right? When you're writing, it's important to set a manageable goal. Okay, you can't write a complete paper in a single day. It's very, very hard, right? Unless you have exceptional writing skills. Okay, but if you set a pace for your paper, if you say, okay, this is my deadline. Okay, my deadline is about 6 weeks later for the journal, and I'm going to pace out my writing, which means your last 2 weeks have to be kept for reviewing, and you'll have to finish your writing in the first 4 weeks. You'll have to give yourself ample time for review. Remember, the part 3 of writing was revising, right? Pre-writing, organizing, revising. Revising is a large component. Okay, so you will have to set manageable goals. And if you're going through a writing block, if you're going through the difficulty, give yourself something nice, right? I mean, you finish a part of writing, go take a walk, reward yourself. right? Obviously, some of us are intrinsically motivated. Some of us are extrinsically motivated. For some of us, going for a jog, going for a walk, listening to music, drinking a cup of chai, having a cup of tea could be helpful. For some of us, it's intrinsic motivation. It motivates you. You feel great. You feel fabulous, right? So tell yourself you have done a great job. It's important for us to also encourage ourselves. The entire theory of self-suggestion in psychology is that if you tell yourself that you're going to do this well, you will work towards doing it well. It doesn't happen automatically. It's not a magic potion. But if you tell yourself, you will automatically set goals that are small, that are tangible, and that reach your outcome. And that becomes important. When you're writing, set short breaks. Okay, I'm going to quickly share a technique which says, something called the Pomodoro principle. Okay, which says that you work for a particular amount of time and then you take a short break. Okay, 50, 10, 40, 20, you could decide. Okay, please check that out. It's called the Pomodoro principle. Okay, and it's a fantastic principle. It works for any kind of work that you do. It works for desk work. It works for any monotonous work you do. It also works great for writing. Taking the short breaks, planning your day out on how you will write that particular day. Writing has to be planned. Right? Unless there's a point when you feel, okay, today I'm going to write, I just have all these ideas coming in. That's a different day. But otherwise, when you're writing with a focus, with a goal, your writing has to be planned. And like I said before, your initial drafts are for your eyes only, right? So even before you show it to that friend, first figure out, have you written it well? Okay? And you have to understand that yes, it's the Pomodoro principle, Rukmani, right? And you have to understand that when you're writing, right, a paper, there's a different way you pace it out. Thesis writing, there's a different way you pace it out. One of the best suggestions I ever received from my guide was to start writing as I did my, literature and as I started my fieldwork. He said, don't wait for the last 6 months to write. So he would constantly make us write chapter drafts. He would constantly ask us to slowly put things in, slowly put ideas in. Because what we thought was our first draft to what becomes your final draft, there's a huge difference. So yes, thesis writing is more demanding, is a more long duration process, but the principles are the same. You just have to apply them in blocks, right? Just the way you'll have to plan your time out for about 6 months or 1 year of writing, okay? Again, like I said, it depends university to university, it depends institution to institution, it depends guide to guide, okay? So now we look at maybe the final segment of today. Okay, what is the difference between social science and science research writing? Okay, how different are they? Okay, I'm going to give you all about a minute or two to think, and then I want you to put on chat. Okay, what do you think is the difference between science writing and social science writing? In the group, right, for the course, we have quite a balanced number from both ends. So I want to see, what do you think? How do you think your writing or your discipline writing differs from the others? Anybody, you can put it on chat, but just one line. Don't write a large paragraph, one single line of how do you think it differs. Yeah, science writing is more objective, social science is more subjective. Okay, okay, sure. Not much different. Both require systematic process. Yeah, yeah. Science writing is input and output. Okay, okay. More data, more experimental, objective, qualitative, subjective. Medical terminologies in your writing. Okay, the qualitative, quantitative part, experience part. Social science is more about field work. Okay, methodologies are different. True. Writing is about knowledge. Okay, quantitative approach. Okay, okay, exploration. Okay, description. All right. Okay, audience is different. True, true. Analysis was analytical. Okay, empirical. Okay, okay. Okay, all right, all right. You all already have some of the answers here. Okay, but we will look at from a writing process how this is differ. Yeah, obviously it's epistemologically different. There is no doubt about it. It's different. But I'm not just talking about that. I'm talking about when you're writing it, how does it differ, right? The qualitative, quantitative approach is there. But today, social science research can also be quantified, and it's a combination of qualitative and quantitative data, right? Social science research also has facts today that can be incorporated, just the way science writing is about facts, more descriptive. Okay, okay, fantastic. Thank you so much. That's a lot of responses. Okay, all right, All right, yes. Okay. What most of you have said is you've brought in the component of qualitative, quantitative, you've brought in the component of exploratory, descriptive, you've brought in the component of field work, lab work, right? All that is true. All that is true. But when you begin to write, okay, there are some common components in writing, but also there are some things where in some of the writing, yes, I think somebody said there's some amount of value judgment based. It again, like I said, it again depends on your discipline. It depends on your topic. Are you describing a topic? Are you exploring it? Are you presenting an argument, right? Are you debating on a particular theme? It completely depends on that, okay? Yes, the writing, while most of us feel social science is thematic and science is more objective, numeric based, in science writing also, you can thematically present your thoughts, right? Okay. So let's understand these differences in the next couple of slides. Now, when we first looked at science, right, the terminology science, you have to understand that over the years, the norm has changed. There's a changing norm. Okay, what is science? It's a systematic and organized body of knowledge in any area of inquiry, which uses a scientific method. Now, what's a scientific method? Like you said, it's objective, it's empirical, it's numeric based, it's observation based, right? It is something that you can redo again and you can test, right? There's the testing component, right? Now, what is natural science? Natural science is about things, that are naturally occurring, objects, phenomena, okay? In natural sciences, you again have your physical sciences, you have your earth sciences, you have your life sciences. But these are just from a point of view of understanding your disciplines, right? Social science, we say, is the science of people. It is about understanding groups, it's about understanding societies, it's about understanding economies, about understanding collectives, right? And how does that collective behave? Okay, but what you have to understand is, for example, I also teach behavioral science, and behavioral science is an interdisciplinary component. Behavioral science has public policy, behavioral science has psychology, it has economics, right? And with economics, there's a bit of maths that comes in. Similarly, research writing today is an interdisciplinary experience. I did my master's in psychology and moved on to my thesis work was a combination of management and psychology components. But today, as I work as a consultant in industry and in academia, as I teach a couple of specialized courses, what I have understood is I take the learnings from one area and I incorporate it into the other, right? Similarly, a few learnings from my corporate experience, I can incorporate it into my academic classes. The theories that I learn when I do my research, when I prepare for my academic courses, I use those to teach in my corporate trainings. Just that way, writing is interdisciplinary, right? You could be a zoologist, you could be a microbiologist, you could be looking at food science, okay? But you have to understand that you are constantly in an interdisciplinary environment today, right? You could be working in one of the physical sciences. Humanities, your languages, they also work a lot like social sciences, right? We have somebody who's saying, how do humanities differentiate? Humanities, I would put humanities under social sciences, political sciences, humanities. Psychology, in some discipline, is humanities at undergrad level and becomes a science at the master's level, right? So do not go too much by the demarcations of whether you're in the humanities or you're in social science or you're in pure sciences. Obviously, there is, a particular writing guide that your institution may ask you to follow, a particular format. But beyond that, the writing has to be interdisciplinary in its experience. Okay, so before we go on to in writing, what is the difference? I'm going to tell you a couple of tips before that. I'm going to come back to this question of understanding inductive and deductive reasoning, right? We always say the scientific inquiry, but when I say scientific inquiry, I don't mean just pure sciences. Social sciences take on a scientific inquiry today, right? You look at any field work which is done, it takes on an inductive or a deductive format of reasoning today. And so what do we do in inductive inquiry, right? The goal of the researcher is to infer theoretical components and patterns from the data they observe. So you're building theory. And that's what your research is all about. Yeah, your inductive research. In deductive, you're testing concepts and patterns known from theory using empirical data. So it's a theory testing research. right? And in that way, social science also incorporates these two components, and it evolves over time. The social science theories evolve over time, right? Meera, somebody is asking to take a break, but we'll have to tell them that we do not have a break in these 2 hours.
Yeah, yes, ma'am. So we will probably not be able to give them a break right now. So if they can just, yeah, hold on, that's it.
Yeah. Okay. We haven't planned the break, but depending on consensus, we'll see how, because a break with having 300 people to come back, it's never a 3-minute break. Okay. So if you want to take a bio break, you can do that. I'm speaking, but you can do your bio break or your water break. But we do not have a planned break. All right. So from here, let's understand. Okay, now there's a lot that I can talk on this. Okay, but the idea is I want to pick your interest. Like I said, I want to create that interest. I want you to take this thought back. This class is not about inductive and deductive reasoning, but this class is to understand that when you're doing research writing, you have to understand where you come from, right? Is your trail of thought inductive or your trail of thought is deductive? Also, if you have to look at Daniel Kahneman's System 1 and System 2 thinking, Kahneman and Tversky's work on System 1 and System 2 thinking and how it impacts how we also write becomes very important. Are we looking at something that's fast-paced, right? Are we also writing in System 1 thinking? Or are we writing in System 2 thinking, which is more deliberate? Right? These are things that you all as writers, you all as research scholars, you all as academicians, you all as professionals have to delve upon, have to reflect upon. Okay. So I'm going to now share with you, okay, this I've collated from different articles and different papers. Okay, so what is the social science research writing? Okay, different approaches that are there. Okay, one of the most common ones, obviously, is the case study approach. Now, what you have to understand is the definitions that I've given here are for the sake of convenience. They're very brief. Okay, and this course is not about these approaches, but this course is about the larger research writing. But each of you would be picking on 1 or 2 of these approaches to work on your doctoral work or your master's thesis work. So I want you to understand why these approaches are different. Okay, the case study approach, okay, wherein we explain the implication and the characteristics of any complex research problem, right? But often, traditionally, it's a single bounded unit of analysis. Okay, for example, you're looking at one particular component. You're looking at, say, victims of domestic violence, or I'm looking at people who have begun composting at home, and I'm trying to understand how do they do that. Okay, so it's one single line of thought. Now, some scholars could use the case study approach, but look at it from a triangulation perspective, which means they will not only look at it from a one-point thing of, okay, how is this thing happening, but then also look at external secondary data, also look at an observation component, and then put together the case study approach. Again, qualitative research is very complex. Qualitative research is, you have to be trained to understand and do qualitative research. Yeah, whether you're looking at content analysis, whether you're looking at triangulation, it's a completely different skill that you'll have to build. So depending on your area of research, you'll have to decide whether your data is quantitative or qualitative in nature, or your research study has a combination of both qualitative and quantitative data, and how are you going to write about both the sets of data. Okay, then you have comparison approach, wherein you're either comparing and contrasting ideas, contrasting constructs. Okay, then you have a particular kind of approach in social science, which is more of a definition. I'm going to talk about a policy proposal. I'm going to talk about a particular controversial practice. So I could be talking about a menstrual hygiene practice that's there in a particular community in the country, right? I could just be defining the component. Then I could choose a subject where I'm describing it, right? Where I'm describing it in detail for you to understand how does the practice happen. Okay, which communities in the country follow a menstrual hygiene practice, and how do they, enumerate the practice? How do they get the women's health component into that practice? Okay, I could be looking at evaluative approaches, wherein I'm not only looking at a theoretical concept, but I'm also then critiquing it. Does that really work? Theory says that if you take care of your employees, if you put them in a workplace environment that has good lighting, good facilities, you're going to increase the engagement of the employee. I could just be evaluating that component, right? Theory says this, but does it really work? I could be looking at McGregor's theory X and theory Y of how people work, that some people are self-motivated, but some people have to be pushed to work. And I could take that theory and bring it to the workspace and understand how that works, right? My research could also be something that delves into a particular line of inquiry. It could be exploratory in nature. And why am I doing an exploratory nature? An exploratory approach could build upon a descriptive and an evaluative approach, right? Remember, don't look at these approaches as airtight compartments, because just the way writing is interdisciplinary, today researchers employ, right, multiple approaches into their work. Okay, so do not ever bind yourself. Do not have a blinkered approach to how can I do this study. Always keep your mind open. Always understand that you as a researcher, right, you as an academician, you as a professional can incorporate multiple approaches. The moment you break away from that mindset that I only need to do this approach because this is the best approach, is when you will, kind of find a whole new world opens up. Okay, so you can use multiple approaches. Then you have the interpretive approach. Theoretical knowledge, okay, you're using what you have understood to then study some kind of a management practice. That's an interpretive approach. So for example, a lot of action research that happens in organizational development, right? When you're making changes in the organization to study organizational change, uses an interpretive approach, right? Narrative approach, where I'm just writing from an experiential point of view. I think we have one participant, we have one or two participants who have in their reason to be a part of this have spoken about a narrative approach. They have spoken either about a journey they have taken or about something that they have done and how they are writing about it, right? That's a narrative approach. Okay, then we have the persuasive approach, wherein you could take a position in a debate and give the reasons. The persuasive approach is also the argumentative theory approach, right? Wherein you take a stand and you tell people why should that happen. Okay, and then the other thing today is the policy memorandum approach, right? The policy memorandum approach is about just summarizing a fact, right? So I could have a student who could be studying the Motor Vehicle Act and just studying how that act has ensured safety of both pedestrians and motor riders, and how has it helped states to maintain and track accidents? How has it reduced the incidence of accidents? How has it increased the safety of its citizens? It could just be that. And how do you address the issue? What are the changes in that policy? Right? So these are all various approaches that are there. You could go by the book and you could look at a particular approach, okay? Or you could look at, or you could look at, what your institution does, what your guide does, and then you can look at how to bring in that approach there, okay? What's important when you're writing in social sciences, that even in science writing, but it's important that you avoid the use of superfluous non-textual elements. Don't have images, figures, charts, and tables just because they look good, right? Or just because you think they're fanciful, right? It's important that you connect that image to your story. Only what is necessary and what enhances the result of your results and the understanding of it is what you have to use. Okay, and the same thing comes for presentations. I mean, shouldn't unnecessarily have too much happening there. Okay, so that approach has to be very, very direct. That approach has to be very, very objective in nature. So yes, social science is qualitative, social science is exploratory, but social science at the same time can also be objective by nature. Okay, so initially we all said, okay, social science is subjective, yes, but there's also an objective element today. The way research is interdisciplinary today, there's a lot of focus on quantitative data also. So you will have to keep in mind as researchers on how to assimilate these different approaches and how to work to the best of your subject. What will benefit your research topic the most? What kind of approach should you take so that you do justice to your research problem? And that is what you have to keep in mind. Some of you may want to just develop into a qualitative researcher. Then you have your path defined. Then you know you're going to learn qualitative research. Some of you may only want to be a quantitative researcher. Then you know what's your path. But for the others who want to transcend both the paths, you'll have to figure out, depending on the work you're doing, which kind of approaches do you have to employ. Okay. There's a very interesting approach that has been given specifically for science research writing and science papers, given by a particular researcher called Rebecca Barther, okay, and who developed the IMRAD approach, which is often used by science journals, okay. And it says that, okay, you start with what's the introduction, okay, what is the question that you're studying? Then you look at the methods. How was the problem studied? How did you look at it? Okay. Then you look at what are the findings. And finally, you present the discussions. Very simple, right? Introduction to your topic. What is your method? What is your methodology? What are the methods you have employed, right? What do your results show? Based on your results, what's your analysis and what's your discussion? What's your conclusion on it, right? This is very simply put, the IMRAD approach. Okay. As a management doctoral student, when I began writing my doctoral work, and because I was using components of both management and of psychology, I, to some extent, also followed the IMRAD approach in my writing. So I didn't have one objective, one chapter, but I actually followed introduction, literature review, methodology, discussion analysis, conclusion, right? So again, like I said, it depends on your institution, it depends on your doctoral guide, and it depends on your research guide. You know, even if you're a master student who wants to do some research work, it depends on your guide. It depends on the person you're working with, the professor you're working with. Okay. Now, in scientific method, the other thing that's told is the different steps. Okay, you're observing, you're questioning, you're putting across a hypothesis, and you're predicting. So if there's observation, there's a problem to be solved, you identify that, and the researcher usually asks a specific question. So this is another way to look at the approaches in scientific method writing, okay, in science paper writing. Then some of the papers could be about hypothesis and prediction. So a hypothesis is a tentative solution to a problem, right? And a lot of times, while in social sciences, especially in psychology and sociology, we do a lot of null hypothesis. Okay. In some cases, you may have directional hypothesis. You formulate that, and then you make a prediction which can be tested. Okay. Then you have experimental writing, where you design a study and the research is conducted to collect relevant data. In social sciences, you have quasi-experiments, you have pre and post studies, right? In science writing, you obviously have lab-based experiments. So you could have control groups, and you could have the experimental groups. And that's how your experimental writing is done. Okay, then you look at the result and the interpretation, you summarize the collected data, you look at the conclusions, and finally you see that what you have found, does it also contribute to theory? Do the findings have an implication which is theoretical in nature, apart from the implication being something that can be applied to the industry? Okay, so this is what we looked at today. Okay, these are the different components. We have actually closed about 10 minutes early. Okay, we do have an extra time for Q&A, which will open up the floor. But before we do that, I want you to quickly, okay, think and tell me what was your aha moment. What is that one thing that you take away from the last 90 minutes that we have spent with each other? Okay, so what did we do today? We looked at what is research writing. We understood what is the purpose of research writing. We understood what is the writing process, the pre-writing, okay, and the organizing and the revising. We looked at the component of cubing. We looked at the component of status theory. Post that, we looked at understanding how the different approaches are and how do you differentiate between the two. Okay, we also looked at the component of the writer's block. We looked at how do you deal with your audience. Okay. Meera, I would like to request you to save this component where they've shared the aha moment from the session, if we can do that. You'll have to save the chat separately.
Yes, ma'am. Yes.
Okay, all right.
Yeah.
Okay. So for a lot of you, I understand that the cubing theory and the status theory was something new, right? Also to understand that most of us face the writer's block, to know that we have company, right? We are human beings. At the end of it, we're also collective in our minds. And it helps us to know that there's somebody else who thinks like that. And the fact that writing today is very, very interdisciplinary by nature. Okay. All right. Mira, we can actually open up the floor for discussion.
Yeah. Great. So if you have questions, please put them in the chat box and we will unmute you. Or you could also raise your hands and then we'll do the same. And then you can ask your questions.
Mira, I'll stop sharing my slide.
A little brief. Yeah. Please do that. Thank you.
Okay. All right, everyone. I know a lot of questions came in. I did try answering them during the session, but put them in now.
Sure. We can take them now. So there is one question from Narasimhamurthy, which I just saw. Why we can unmute him. So you could go ahead with your question about interdisciplinary.
Yeah, thank you, ma'am, for your very descriptive in your discussion. Like I am hearing this interdisciplinary. Like today is really looks like it is a trend. And why is that so? Like why can't we just have only one discipline in our writing? I'm just wondering. I can understand interdisciplinary is needed, but why is that so? Like, what's your opinion?
You're asking me my opinion, or you're asking me objectively why is interdisciplinary needed?
In general,
okay.
Not.
I think, when you work on an interdisciplinary basis, you actually widen your horizon of understanding a subject. So if I'm looking at something and if I decide that I'm going to only look at it from the management perspective, I only get one viewpoint. But if I want to look at understand, for example, I'll give you an example of work-life research. If I look at it from only a management perspective, then I'll only see the policies and I'll see its impact. But if I then want to understand what is the psychological impact on employees, right? How does it affect their emotional and mental health? And then I want to look at the sociological impact, that when an organization has a good work-life policy, how does it impact us sociologically? Are women going back to workspace after their maternity leave? Are more men taking the maternity leave today? Do we see a sociologically different trend, right, in the population? So a discipline today, the fact that the world is so, we are really open to interactions, and having moved online, I think it's become easier for us to interact with different people. So in my opinion, I'm an interdisciplinary researcher, Narasimha. And so I'm going to call you all by your first names. I hope that's okay. And we have to, so I only see the benefit of interdisciplinary research. But of course, if you're somebody who wants to do research in a particular focused thing, right, focused domain, then what you need to do is do your research in that area. But you have to at least understand that if you go to a conference tomorrow, which is your subject domain, you're going to be able to do the conversations. But say tomorrow you have to go to another conference where you have people from other domains also coming in, and your domain is just one segment of that conference. How will you then do the conversation?
That makes
and that's where research writing, for example, say somebody is working in civil engineering, right? And we all know about the Tehri Dam, right? We know how it is a thing of importance in terms of both the engineering component of civil engineering, and it's important from a geophysical point of view. Now, say somebody is going for a civil engineering conference, they may look at it from the civil engineering perspective. But say somebody is going on an earthquake and understanding earthquake prevention international conference, where then do their conversations fit in? Right? Yeah. So I'm giving you a very simple example from civil engineering and from geophysical science. But to understand that today we are no more in boxes. In fact, there is no box. We're all on this jigsaw puzzle which keeps fitting in differently.
That makes sense. Thank you, ma'am.
Yeah, so that way.
Yeah. Great. So we have Sharmishta Dhar who has raised his hand. So Sharmishta, please go ahead.
Yes, Sharmishta.
Yes, am I audible, ma'am?
You are Sharmishta. Yeah, tell me.
Yes.
Ma'am, thank you for a very illuminating discourse on research writing. My question is, when you were holding forth on the pre-writing phase of the pre-writing phase actually, and especially focusing on the 6 points view, the cubing process, like describing, arguing for, against it, etc. I was kind of wondering whether the Bloom's taxonomy, the revised Bloom's taxonomy can actually be incorporated while we are trying to come up with our research ideas and put it together and collating. Can it be done?
Yeah, of course. For example, Sharmishta, Bloom's taxonomy has primarily been used in pedagogy, right, to develop instructional design. But you can also use Bloom's taxonomy. And if you see, right, what I have given you in cyclical process and cubing is actually Bloom's taxonomy in a pyramid. Correct? From your reflection to your revising to your revisiting a component. Are you there, Sharmishta? Can you hear me? I think we lost her. But yes, you can draw.
I was there.
Yeah. So you can draw parallels between Bloom's taxonomy and between the cubing process. It's possible. But obviously the output or the focus of using Bloom's taxonomy has been from a pedagogical approach, has been from an instructional design approach. But again, today instructional design is also very, very fluid. Right? So you have to, as a researcher, as a writer, see what best can you get of different components and see how you can combine them and use it. There is no single rule book which says you have to only use this format. So you will have to figure out what works for you. Does that answer your question, Sharmishta? I can't hear you.
I guess so. So
Okay.
thank you, ma'am. And then take another question.
Thank you, ma'am.
Mudassir Bashir. Yeah. So Mudassir, you can go ahead with your question.
Good afternoon, ma'am. I have started doing research in social anthropology from IIT Hyderabad since I'm in my coursework.
Okay.
So for our coursework, we have been given a sort of like 2-page write-up
Okay.
in which we have to define why we have to do particular research and what are the different sub themes we are looking for and what is the relation between these within these sub themes and with the bigger question of research, but I'm unable to start how to deal with it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Mudassir, you have to start with the pre-writing process. Okay. So you have your questions. What they're doing is they're asking you for a research proposal in 2 pages, primarily, as you're doing your coursework.
Yeah.
So what you have to do is keep those questions in mind and see if you broadly have answers to them. Okay. So on a sheet of paper, you can just put that like a flowchart or bullet points. Then once you do that, then see what in that do you want to answer. So first, your research problem has to be clear. Correct?
Mhm.
What is your discipline? What are you looking at in that? Correct? So put your research problem, write down your research problem to study dash. You could study relationship between something and something. You could study the impact of something on something. You could just study a descriptive component. Put your research problem on paper, then break it down and see what in that research problem are you interested in, and then understand the themes. Themes are nothing but your dependent and independent variables. That's what they're expecting of you in that
Yeah.
research proposal.
Yeah,
Okay,
but
so
for example, like
tell me.
I'm opting health seeking behavior of a particular tribe in Kashmir,
Okay.
from where I belong to.
Okay.
So in that scenario, how I need to proceed for
Okay.
choosing sub
So
themes and
health-seeking behavior of a particular tribe. So you'll have to look at prior health practices in the tribe. Okay. You will have to look at indigenously, did they do something? Okay. Have they reached out to community health centers? Okay. How have they worked with the local health officials there? Then you have to look at, how do you define health? What do you mean by health practices, Mudassir? That's your first starting point, right? And then you have to see, are you looking at particular health practices? Okay. Are you looking
Yes.
at a particular group? Are you looking at elderly? Are you looking at pediatric, which means children? Are you looking at women? Okay. Because health practices is a very broad term in a particular tribe. Okay. So then you'll have to define what kind of health practices. Are you looking at health and nutrition, or are you looking at addressing difficulties in health? Are you looking at, say, for example, some kind of congenital condition that's there in the tribe? Are you looking at some kind of a health condition that arises from where the tribe lives in that region? because of harsh climatic conditions. So you will have to decide, and you will have, it's like a filter mechanism, right? We have the filter theory. So you have to go broad and you have to slowly narrow it down. It's called the filter or the funnel technique. Okay, so that's when you will finally come and decide, okay, so this is the particular health practice I want to study in this particular tribe, whose prior health practices have been so and so, how have they reached out to the community is this, and then see, okay, then you can do a primary research wherein you can go and study their practices, stay there for some time, because something like this cannot be done through secondary data.
Yeah.
Right, so that's a simple way on how you can start. Okay.
Yeah, thank you so much. It was very helpful.
Okay. Yeah.
Thank you. We will take Dev Jyoti Bhatta's question. Dev Jyoti, please go ahead.
Hello.
Yeah.
Good afternoon, ma'am.
Yeah, we can hear you.
I'll be asking a question which comes from my personal experience. I do literary studies and cultural studies, and
Okay.
I want to ask what I want to ask is that, is it possible for us, for researchers and scholars in humanities, to move away from from a very complicated and bombastic language which he used? Because I believe that we can say the same kind of thing in much simpler language, in easy language, and language is always a choice. But again and again I see that researchers and scholars, they always choose to use a more complicated language. And why is that, and can we actually move away from that trend?
Okay. Deepjyoti, what you've asked today is something I'm going to talk about later in much detail. But the idea is, you're right, you don't have to complicate your writing. Okay. Writing is about reaching out. And if you're writing, that's where understanding your audience comes in, right? When I was preparing for this session, and when, I think Meera and I went through the applications multiple times, and I have to give her all credit because she did the first hard work on it. And then, I moved on and we looked at the applications. We also realized that each of you come with varying understanding of the language. When I say English, but what is your skill here? What is the premise we start from? You all are skilled in your subject matter, and that's your core strength, right? This course will help you write a little better also. So do not use jargons. That's something I always tell people. Do not use jargons unless it's absolutely necessary. If you're going for a technical conference in your area, then you will have to use the jargons. But if you're wanting to reach out to a larger audience at a general conference, you'll have to speak the language they speak, right? So for me, when I'm doing a session like this for all of you, you're such diverse fields, all of you are from, I will have to keep the language very, very generic. I will have to keep my examples, which traverse multiple things. My examples could be psychology, anthropology, sociology, chemistry, political science, right? So you have to reach out to your audience. So your language is audience dependent. And just because you're using jargons doesn't mean you know it all. Right? So keep it simple, because the idea is to reach out to somebody. Yeah.
Thank you, ma'am.
Yeah.
Great. Thank you, ma'am. So may I also request all of you to please raise your hands. It is, you can just go to the reactions button and then click to raise your hand. It'll be easier for us to navigate because there are so many questions in the chat box. We'll come to that, but if possible, please do raise your hands. So now I'll ask Shraddha Singh to ask a question. Shraddha, please go ahead.
Hello, am I audible?
You are Shraddha. Yeah,
yes.
Good afternoon, ma'am. Ma'am, my question is, if one is having a comparative approach, especially in literature, like comparison of Indian with Western or vice versa, then what should be one's methodology, and how to remain objective?
Okay. So if you are, say, comparing Indian, I don't know, did you say Indian versus Western? Is that what you said, Shraddha?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Yes,
so,
ma'am. Yes.
You're studying Indian versus Western practices of, say, food. Can I pick that, because it's an easy thing to talk about right now? Yeah, as an immediate thing.
Yes,
okay.
Yes,
so in your methodology, there has to be two components. You have to do both quantitative and qualitative. So from a qualitative perspective, you'll have to look at previous literature which has studied food practices across Indian culture and Western culture. But again, Western culture is very broad. Indian culture by itself is very, very diverse. So you'll have to then narrow down and define which segment of Indian culture are you talking about, which segment of Western culture are you talking about. So your secondary research your literature has to robustly look at, scholars who have studied different food practices, different customs and customs, traditions, modes, norms. You could call it by different names. So you'll have to look at it from a sociological perspective. You'll have to look at it from a cultural and food practice perspective. Okay, so that's a secondary research. At a primary research level, to study food practices, you could do survey method. Okay, you could send out questionnaires. You could just go stay with certain communities to understand the Indian culture. Like I said, if you're narrowing it down, and go and stay somewhere and figure out your thing with the Western culture. So you could do a experiential based understanding and comparison also. Okay, your question is very broad, Shraddha, but immediately if you say these are the kind of methodologies that you can use, but ideally a combination of qualitative and quantitative.
Okay, ma'am. And my next question was, ma'am, how to remain objective?
Shraddha, objectivity is something that comes with practice. You'll have to understand that when you have a personal opinion, one way to deal with it that I've always told my students is, whenever you think your personal opinion is coming in, create a separate document which says my thoughts and put that in there. So it's like you have funneled it from the objective portion, put it there. And later in your writing, if you want to put in a segment where you say my thoughts or my reflections, put it across. But you have to constantly be aware that, okay, so you can't go into studying food practices thinking in your head that this food practice is good and that food practice is bad. So you cannot come from a place of bias or judgment.
Yes.
Right? So you have to, in your head, first clear that space before you go into doing research in that area.
Okay, ma'am. Yeah. Thank you, ma'am. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Great. So we'll take a question from Khushbu Thakur. Khushbu, please ask your question.
Good afternoon, ma'am. I am actually currently preparing.
Khushbu, there was I think it was a little loud, but yeah, tell me please. I can hear you. Yeah. Hi, Khushbu.
Hello, am I audible? Good afternoon.
You are audible, Khushbu. You are audible. Yeah.
I'm in my first year of master's right now, and I'm trying to prepare an observation for my research methodology class. So I'm currently thinking on the lines of working on an NGO, and when I'm writing an observation, just like how Shraddha said, does it need to be objective also, or can I put in my perspective regarding my observations of that NGO?
Okay, the observation methodology, I can speak from a psychologist perspective, has to be completely objective. So you are a third person just observing it.
All right.
Your subjective perspective should not come into an observation. An observation is what you see, you write that. That's observation as a technique.
Okay.
Yeah? You don't imagine things and you don't add any extra analysis to it.
Okay. Okay, thank you, ma'am. Also, one more question was, when I go about writing my observation, do I need to follow the same method which says introduction, methodology, observation, and then I write my conclusion?
Yes, if that is what has been asked by your university, you will have to follow that.
We've not been given any guidance.
Not been asked. Then you just write about what was observed, what did you see, right? And you'll have your recorded thing, right? When you observe the behavior, you would have made your recordings. Have that as an annexure or an appendix to your document.
Oh, thank you, ma'am. I really appreciate the lecture. It's really good.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. We'll take a question from Shruti. Shruti, go ahead.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, Shruti, I can. Tell me.
Yes.
Yeah. Hi, Madhurima. Thank you so much. It was an excellent session. I really enjoyed it. I have a couple of questions. First of all, during the course, which runs till May, are we going to address thesis and literature review sessions like in a different sessions?
Yes, we will be doing literature review. If you have looked, at the component of the course, you will see that we are covering literature review at some point.
What about thesis writing, PhD thesis writing?
Thesis writing briefly, the components of it, yes.
Okay. And also when you said when we are working on a research paper, we should aim to target both scientific community and as well as general public. But in a research paper, particularly when it comes to a scientific literature, how are we going to do that? Because we will definitely have to use a lot of technical terms in it.
Correct.
So how are you going to balance that?
Okay, okay. So Shruti, let me be this clear. I didn't mean one single paper for both of them. It's not possible.
Okay.
Right? Your research paper is for your scientific community. It's for your research group. It's for your peers. Okay, when you're writing for the general public, you could decide to do it in form of science communication. So it could be articles which are in magazines from your area of work, or it could be, in the newspapers as articles. Today, a lot of newspapers have extensive articles that publish, right? I mean, often you also see articles on embargoed papers that come out. So it depends on whether you're doing generic science writing. When I say science writing, I don't mean science as a discipline, but something where you're reaching out to the larger community. Are you doing science communication, or are you writing it for your research community? So then your style will definitely differ. It's not the same.
All right.
What I meant is you'll have to adapt your style depending on what your audience is, who your audience is, and what your output is.
All right. So there will be multiple papers rather than single.
Yeah, definitely. Definitely.
All right. All right. Thank you.
Yeah.
So, Shruti, can I please request you to introduce yourself very briefly, and may I also request participants to just give one-liners you ask your question, if that is okay. So, Shruti, if you can just briefly tell us about you. Shruti, are you there?
Yeah, Meera, we also have a lot more participants who have raised their hand. Yeah, we'll take one question per participant.
Yeah, that's there. We'll
keeping
take,
the time
all
in
the questions.
Yeah.
Yes, absolutely. So, Shruti, are you there? Can you hear us?
We just finished our
Okay,
question,
looks
Meera.
like we have.
Yeah. Hi. So
Yeah, you can. Yeah, we did. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, so I'm a project associate at IISc. I'm working on research thermal physiology. Yeah.
Okay. Okay.
Great, thank you. So now we will take Janet Orlean's question. Janet, please go ahead and just briefly introduce yourself, and please make your questions short as well. Thank you.
Sure. Hi, I'm Janet. I'm largely an experienced designer, so my work is interdisciplinary. I connect the scientific aspect to uh, the public and vice versa. So that's largely what I do. Right now, I'm working on a research paper, and I find that personally, I'm finding it largely comfortable to be able to write a paper. But the problem is I'm stuck when it comes to grant writing. I'm horrible at it. I just wanted to know, are we covering syllabus which is based on grant writing?
Okay. So we right now we haven't incorporated grant writing because it's a different skill altogether. Okay. And like you rightly say, Janet, you could be a good writer who writes great research papers, but grant writing is a different skill. We haven't incorporated it as of now. But maybe in when I do one of the writings, maybe I could share some links with you that could help you. Would that work for you? And you will have to do some amount of self-reading.
Any form of help in this matter would be appreciated.
Sure. So I think that is something we can incorporate. But right now you all have received the course syllabus, and that's what we are covering. If you have a request like this, you can put it across, and we'll see. We can at least share resources. I would be able to do that. That's not a problem.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay.
Meera, I think we lost you. Hi, Meera, are you there? Okay. I think.
Ma'am, due to network issue, I think.
No problem. No problem. Meera, you're back now. We lost you for a moment.
Yeah. Okay. I was just asking this question, and yeah, you have been unmuted.
I think Meera, we didn't hear. Can we have the question from Upendra Vilokana? And please introduce yourself in briefly. Upendra Vilokana, are you there?
Okay, it's like Upendra is not here, ma'am. So we will take another question from Debajit Ghosh. Debajit.
Yeah, Upendra Vilokana, please.
Hello.
Questions. Yes, please.
Yeah. So I am an actor. I am an actor, director in drama and cinema. So my question is, I want to do a research about an art form of a folk art form. I want to do a research about the structure of the art form. So for which I'm going to use the tools like I'm going to learn the art form. I am going to experience it. I am to discuss and write it. What type of the research does it fall?
That's
If I
an
do this.
that's an exploratory and experiential research. But while you start this, your process is right. You're on the right path, Upendra. But what you have to first start with is meeting the experts. So you'll have to get your expert opinion. You could do a focus group discussion to start with. So you understand what is it that you should exactly look at, and how should you go about the process of learning that art, and then delineating what that art encompasses. So maybe you should start your thread from meeting experts in the field, and then collating that information, and then going about. That would be a good way to start do your methodology for the work. Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Okay. We'll take a question from Zahida Farouk. Zahida, please go ahead.
Yeah, good afternoon, ma'am. It was nice listening to your session. Ma'am, I'm in my second year of my, PhD, and I have already taken my topic, like I'm working on it, I'm doing with my, research review. But then I'm like little confused, ma'am, because there's so much of, so many theses that I come across. And my actually topic is effective method of teaching, a communicative method of teaching English language for the secondary and higher secondary schools, students. And but then I have come across so many, so I'm not able to get like what particular method that I should, look upon, ponder on, and like where do I look for it, ma'am? I have gone through many theses, but still I'm not coming to a point like which method do I take.
Okay. Zahida, there are a couple of things. One thing is literature review is always expensive. Okay. So for a thesis writing, depending on the university, some of them give you a rough number. Okay. But you will have to look at multiple papers. So as you read a paper, okay, you can put the, thematically actually, organize your literature. It's very, very important. So you have to decide, okay, so I want to study the method of teaching English, right? In secondary schools. That's what you said.
Exactly.
So teaching English. So you will have to look at papers which deal with how do you teach English? How do you effectively teach a particular language? Okay. Which is not their vernacular. Okay. So you'll have to first find literature, then you'll have to group them. You have to put them into folders. Okay. Read through them. Okay. And then you'll have to see which of those papers study a method which you can apply. So you have to see what's your sample. Where are you from, Zahida? Which city or which town are you doing the study in?
I'm from Baroda, and I was into academic for very long, and then I left the job and I took up, in a university. I'm a visiting faculty.
Okay. So Zahida, you have to understand that in Baroda, what you're looking at. Then it comes to schooling. Are you looking at CBSE, ICSE? Which board are you looking at? Right?
It's rural. I have that area. Like it's with the rural area, and because since I belong to the rural. Okay.
So then you'll have to look at the government schools. Correct? That's what you're saying. If I have to kind of put it into a group. So then you have to look at studies which have studied the use of English, as a form of instruction in government schools. So that's how you narrow down. Like I said, use the funneling technique.
Okay. But excuse me, ma'am, but that the new NEP has come up, like my guide says, because the new NEP is now focusing on the, mother tongue. So that is a kind of a hindrance to my, study. So it's going to be kind of an obstacle, because my focus is on how to make the students communicate properly and what method do we use. But now the government has come up saying that they are going to only have the mother tongue, and it's going to be the teachers also have to teach everything in the local language, the regional language.
Zahida, I'm good. Your question is really long, but I'm going to try and keep the answer short here. Okay. The application of the NEP is going to take some time. Okay. The NEP does say that you will have to look at using the vernacular, but please understand what exactly is the policy saying. The policy is not saying that you have to stop English. The policy is saying that schools which are adopting the vernacular can continue to do so, and till a particular age, children can learn in the vernacular. Okay. So there are a lot of things that the NEP is saying. It's proposing things in an umbrella structure. Okay. You have to see what. So don't look at that one component of the policy and say my study doesn't apply. Then you'll have to tweak your problem definition and see how English as a medium of instruction is going to help them for maybe their career progress. You'll have to then tweak your problem statement. Before looking at something as an obstacle, see what is the opportunity in it and see how you can use the NEP to your benefit. What does it do? NEP says life skills. So does speaking English become a life skill for students to get jobs?
Okay, okay.
Right?
Oh,
I'm just
wonderful.
giving you a
Oh,
thought to
got
see how
it,
you
got
can
it.
work. Okay.
Yeah, that's
All right.
great. That's great. Thank you so much, ma'am.
Yeah. Okay, Meera, next question. Yeah.
Okay, so we have lots of questions here. Those who have raised your hands, we will take your questions. The rest of you all, we will be taking your questions on the WhatsApp group. And if you're not on WhatsApp, then you can email your questions to us. Otherwise, we'll be opening the WhatsApp group for all of you to ask your questions. So because since we have a lot of questions and we're running a little short of time, we'll take a couple more questions and then the rest of it can be discussed through WhatsApp and email as well.
Yeah, I
So
think let's
may I
ask
please
Victor
request?
Banerjee for his question, Meera.
Sure, ma'am. So Victor Banerjee, please go ahead.
Hi, good evening, ma'am. Hello, am I audible?
Yes, Victor. Good afternoon. I can hear you. Tell me.
Actually, my research is based on the loneliness of closeted bisexual men of South Delhi.
Okay.
Actually, I have attended couple of research workshop previously, and they are saying that a research hypothesis is mainly applicable for someone who is undertaking research on, say, scientific area. But ma'am, I have already framed my hypothesis on that basis, that how the closeted bisexual men are lonely, and on that basis I have set up my different types of variable. And now when they are saying that okay, research hypothesis is not so mandatory for someone who is undertaking his research endeavor on queer area, so how should I deal with this type of confusion which is actually coming in my way? Like, should I actually stick to my research hypothesis even in the area which are uncharted and which are very, very sensitive? So I would really like your suggestion.
Okay. So, Victor, if I understand right, you are trying to study the loneliness that's experienced by closeted bisexual men, right, in South Delhi. So your sample is from South Delhi. That's your region or location where you're doing your study. Okay. Your sample population is your closeted bisexual men. Okay, that's going to be a little difficult because you'll have to determine how will you come across them, unless you have queer groups where you are already interacting with them and you have a set of people who are ready to partake in your research. Now, your null hypothesis could be that there is no relationship between, okay, let me get this straight. There's no relationship between sexual orientation and loneliness, right? That could be a larger hypothesis. And then your sub hypothesis could be there's no relationship between closeted bisexual orientation and loneliness. Correct? So it's possible for you to have a hypothesis even in your study. Okay, but the whole idea is it's better to start with a null hypothesis than say that being a bisexual man can cause loneliness, right? Than having a directional, a null hypothesis in your case would work because you have a psychological component there, right? The psychological component of stigma, the psychological component of social exclusion. So you will have to look at those psychological components. So in that manner, your study can have a null hypothesis. But again, if you have a guide and your guide is very particular about how your hypothesis should be, the idea is to follow what your guide says because you are affiliated to a particular university.
Okay, thanks.
But for your study, it's definitely possible to have a null hypothesis.
Okay, thanks a lot.
Okay.
Okay, thank you. We'll take one question from Tanvi Amberkar.
Okay.
Tanvi, please go ahead.
Good afternoon, ma'am. I'm from Department of Civics and Politics, University of Mumbai. Am I audible?
You are. But I got the Mumbai, but you're from which department, Tanvi?
Department of Civics and Politics, ma'am.
Civics and Politics. All right. Yeah, continue, please.
My question is really very basic as I'm just the beginner. Like, I have some prejudice and biases in my mind. Like, if I'm working on some marginalization issue, or I'm just like, in the recent time, I was working on privatization of best buses in Mumbai. So I have some established knowledge, and it actually dominates my research work as well. Means I just work on that. Means how can I avoid it? Means it's not wrong. Like we as humans and as like people, it's right. But I don't want to be biased. Like I want to be a balanced person. So how can I do that?
Tanvi, a lot of our biases are unconscious. We don't even know we have our biases. Okay, so firstly, congratulations for the fact that you recognize your biases and you're aware of it. Okay, so that's first step. Now, when you're aware of your biases, what you have to do when you're researching is make sure that the bias does not play or impact your questionnaire or your interview schedule when you're going out to talk to people, when you're going to do your research, or also how you're looking at your topic, right? So you'll have to consciously make sure that your biases are not impacting your study. Yeah, but I completely understand. Often from being the area that you're in, we all have our personal preferences, we all have our personal very, very strong opinions, and those opinions could at times form biases, right? So see how you can use your own opinions and your understanding and your standing on that topic as a strength rather than it impacting it negatively. Does that answer your question, Tanvi? There's no easy way to do it. You'll have to consciously, constantly make sure that, okay, this is my question that I'm asking. Does my question reflect bias? And how do you do it? Then you do a construct validity and of your questionnaire. So you go and meet experts. Okay, you have to first understand and take expert opinion to say that your question is asking what you want to ask and it doesn't have a bias element. The next thing is it measures what you're trying to measure. Okay, so from a research point of view, if you have to develop a questionnaire, this is one of the first things that you should do. You have to validate your questionnaire with experts and do a construct and a content validation of your questionnaire. Okay. Yes, Meera.
Great, thank you, ma'am. So we have a lot of questions. If you could tell me how many questions you are willing to take, maybe a couple of them, and then the rest in the
maybe another two or three, and then the rest of it we can kind of maybe do our chat.
Great, great. So we'll take 3 more questions. May I request Satyam to ask his question?
Yeah. Hi, Satyam.
Namaste, ma'am. Am I audible?
Yes, Satyam. Namaste. You are audible. Tell me.
Ma'am, I'm writing my MSc thesis in Moraji Desai National Institute of Yoga, New Delhi.
Okay. Okay.
Ma'am, my topic is impact of yogic intervention on human memory.
Okay.
And when I write discussion part, there is also a subtopic of memory of mechanism of human memory. So should I include only neurophysiological aspect of it, or also a lot of psychological models has been described describing how memory works? Yeah. So I'm facing little bit problem about this interdisciplinary approach.
So Satyam, if you have the bandwidth, since your topic is on yogic interventions on memory, you will have to include both the perspectives, not just the neurophysiology of memory, but also understanding long-term memory, short-term memory, your working memory, right? Then memory with languages, then how do your lobes work? So all of that has to come in. It has to be a combination, apart from understanding just the neurophysiology. That would be my immediate answer. Right? Because how our working memory works, right? When you have yogic interventions, what does it impact more? Does it impact your short-term memory more, or does it impact your long-term memory more? Or is it something that's actually impacting your working memory, so that over time, with the working memory improving, okay, the long-term memory also improves? Does that answer your question, Satyam? Yes. We lost you, Satyam, or are you there?
Yeah, I sure hope so.
Yes, ma'am. Ma'am, I got the answer.
You got the answer. Okay. All right, Satyam. Yeah.
Okay.
But sorry, Meera. Satyam, your literature should also cover all these components. So in your literature also, you have to thematically write about the neurophysiology of memory, and then you'll have to write about the psychological models of memory. And then look at your further methodology and how will you put that together. It has to be a combination, starting from introduction to literature to your final analysis. Okay, all right, yeah. Sorry, Meera.
We'll take one question from Naresh, and then probably one from Pragya Upadhyay. So yeah, Naresh, please go on.
Hi, Naresh, can you hear us? Please ask your question. I don't hear him. Okay. Maybe let's go to Pragya, okay. And then we'll come back to Naresh.
Pragya? Yeah. Pragya, please ask your question.
Can't hear you, Pragya. Can't hear you. Your mic is not working.
It was a wonderful session, ma'am. Thank you so much. And especially, touching all the psychological perspective also, how an individual needs to deal with the process of research work. My question is that somebody like me, who I have a master's in psychology, and I've been working as a counseling psychologist, but I have no research work. Like I have a lot of practical or clinical experience, but no research experience. Now I want to develop that. My question is that how do we need to, select a topic to begin with? Suppose I am interested in even child psychology, prenatal psychology, also addiction, and I'm working in all those kind of domains. So how to, come down to one point, especially, and to begin with, maybe like writing one research paper, that should be the aim, or really directly thinking about writing proposals for maybe PhD program or things like that.
Okay. There are two ways. One thing is that if you figure out what interests you the most. So while if you're looking at child psychology, there's a lot, right? You can look at developmental issues. You can look at learning disabilities. You can look at children and play today, right? There are a lot of multiple things you can study. So you have to see what interests you, and with it you also have to see which is an area that's really being researched upon now and which is in its nascent stages, which means that area of research will grow. Right? So based on that, you will have to first filter in, and then you have to find researchers who are working in that area in the city you are in or wherever. If you're okay with relocating, you have to find researchers who are working in that area, write to them, figure out a common line of interest. If you don't want to delve into a PhD immediately, maybe first do some research projects in that area and write, and then you will have to decide if you want to get into a PhD work. But the process is this. The process is figure out what interests you, because PhD is a long process. You'll have to be interested in the topic and be motivated enough to work on it for that duration. So go from your core strength. Yeah, you could be delving into multiple things, but what's your core strength? What do you like the most? Do you like prenatal development? Do you like looking at learning milestones? Do you like looking at children and social interaction? You will have to figure out. You could pick any of that. Yeah. Okay. Meera,
thank you, ma'am. So, Naresh, we are asking.
Yeah, Naresh, I think.
Please unmute and ask your question.
Yeah.
Namaste, ma'am. Myself, Naresh Patla.
Namaste, Naresh. Yeah.
Right now, I am doing PhD in second year from SVS University. My related topic is tele-yoga for PTSD patients.
Okay.
So I am planning to develop one new yoga module for them. In that, I have an issue with the consulting number of experts. I'm not with how many experts do I meet. Can you tell what exact number?
Naresh, there is no magic number. I mean, the more experts you meet, the more robust will be your methodology. Because you're looking at post-traumatic stress disorder and you're looking at yoga as an intervention for post-traumatic stress disorder, and you're creating a module on that, right? So you have to understand that you have to look at yoga from both an Eastern and a Western philosophy. So I would ideally suggest that you meet practitioners who work with yoga and PTSD, and you meet practitioners who only work on PTSD, but they could be, say, using occupational therapy, behavioral therapy, or RBT. Right? Yes. It could be any of it. So you will have to first meet experts who span a particular diverse stream, and then see what is it that you can take into your module. Because today, like you said, even yoga is multidisciplinary, right? I mean, while it may have risen from an Eastern philosophy, today it's worldwide. And you have people who are doing a combination of yoga and mindfulness, correct? But both have the end goal could be similar. So you will have to then interject both these thought processes and put together. And for that, you have to meet as many experts as you can. Unless you have a time-bound thing saying, okay, I have only 2 weeks to meet experts, then you can meet. So meet people online, offline. But the more people you meet, the more robust is your methodology, because you're getting varied opinions.
Anything standard methodology? Actually, I gone through the different development, any intervention module developed. I gone through, there is a size of experts 30, 20. Where can I stop that?
I would say meet at least 20 to 25 experts if you're asking me for a number.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. But there's no hardcore. Like I said, it's not a magic number. The more people you meet, the better ideas you get. And then you'll have to collate it. Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, ma'am. So I think we'll take the rest of the questions on WhatsApp, if that is okay.
Sure.
So any further comments, Madhurima ma'am?
No, I think all good. I understand that, due to paucity of time, we had more than half an hour. We have done 45 minutes of Q&A, but it's a large group. So we will try and take questions, and I would request participants to keep your questions short and, very, very pointed. So it's easier to answer. We will be covering, I think, a lot of questions, Meera, that have come up are asking about our future segments. So maybe if we can share the syllabus with them, it will help them understand that we are covering those components. So a lot of those questions that way are a little redundant.
Yeah, we have already mailed the PDF.
Somebody said they haven't received
Right.
it.
So
So
we
if
have
you can
already
just check
mailed the
on that.
PDF with
Okay. Okay.
an
Sorry.
email. You could always write to us.
Yeah.
So I think that will be taken care of.
Yeah.
And from that, just a few guidelines. Please switch on your videos if possible, at least during the interactive session, so that we can make it really interactive. And also try to enter the meeting as at time, because if you come 1 hour late and so forth, it will be difficult for us as well.
Meera, is it possible for us to set a ground rule that they log in by 10:45, 10:50? Because I saw a lot of participants logging in almost 40 minutes after the session to 1 hour after the session. I think, Niharika, I think Meera is frozen again.
Yes, I think there's some network glitch, ma'am.
No problem. Yeah.
I think, Dr. Madhurima, I completely agree. I think Meera has lost her network. Niharika, can you please take care of these matters? And I think I messaged you already. And Dr. Madhurima has given the time. So after 45 minutes, if someone tried to join, well, you can enjoy the waiting room.
Okay. All right. Thank you so much. Thank you for all the questions and being such an interactive audience. We will see you every Tuesday for the next couple of weeks. So any questions, we will answer them over the chat. And like Professor Sangeetha said, you can email us, you can put it on chat, and we will respond back to them.
Yeah. So Niharika, if you could give a formal vote of thanks, that would be great.
Yes. Yeah. Thanks, Meera. Thank you so much, Madhurima ma'am, for the very fascinating lectures. Every time I hear your lecture, there is some new component which you bring in. So thank you so much for always keeping an interesting tone in your lectures. And thank you, Sangeetha ma'am, for this fascinating ideas, helping young researchers to learn this technique and write better and progress further in their research. So we will be the course schedule and also the course note was shared with everyone via emails by Meera. She'll also be sharing it on WhatsApp yet again. So please don't worry about that. And yeah, I will take up Sangeetha ma'am's suggestion to keep a strict timeline of when you join in. All the meetings actually begin I started the meeting at 10:20. So the meetings will be started 40 minutes prior to the actual session time. So please don't worry about that. And thank you so much, Madhurima ma'am, once again. Thank you, Meera, for facilitating the meeting. Thank you, Ashwini and Abhishek. And thank you, Sangeetha ma'am, for always being there as a guiding light. So thank you, everyone. We'll see you next Tuesday with the course. The module 2 is on writing basics on 9th Feb by Madhurima ma'am. So we'll see you on Tuesday at 11 o'clock. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you, Niharika. Thank you, Meera.